The ocean covers over 70% of the planet, yet it remains less than 5% explored. In the pitch-black abyss, evolution has forged some incredibly bizarre and terrifying creatures that look more like biological nightmares than real animals. Here are 10 of the creepiest and most unnatural creatures ever pulled from the ocean. Number 10. The Magna squid. In November 2007, a remotely operated vehicle belonging to the Shell Oil Company was conducting a routine survey of the Perdido production platform in the Gulf of Mexico. The ROV was descending through the bathypelagic zone, recording the steel struts of the rig at a depth of 7,800 feet. The water pressure at that depth is approximately 3,400 pounds per square inch. Sunlight does not reach it. The camera panned across the empty water column and captured a shape drifting in the artificial glare of the halogen light. It was a cephalopod, but it did not move like one. The Magna, or big-fin squid, possesses a mantle that resembles a heart, flanked by massive wing-like fins. But the defining feature is the tentacles. They do not taper. They extend horizontally from the body before dropping at rigid 90-degree angles, dragging straight down into the void for up to 26 feet. The appendages appear less like biological limbs and more like the strings of a marionette. The footage shows the creature hovering entirely motionless, suspended by physics we only partially understand, waiting for prey to drift into its living net. Only a dozen confirmed sightings of the Magna exist in the official scientific record. No specimen has ever been brought to the surface intact. What makes the big fin squid particularly unsettling is not its size, it is its geometry. Biology on Earth favors curves, spirals, and fluid dynamics. The Magna operates in sharp right angles. It looks like an architectural error, a creature engineered by a process of evolution that abandoned the rules of terrestrial biology because the abyss does not require them. It is a puppet hanging in the dark, and we do not know what it catches. Number 9. The Chasmodon niger. On a summer afternoon in 2007, a fisherman off the coast of Grand Cayman noticed a strange mass floating on the surface of the water. Upon retrieval, it was identified as a black swallower, a small deep-sea fish that rarely exceeds 10 inches in length. It lives at depths of up to 9,000 feet, a zone where meals are so infrequent that survival requires absolute opportunism. The specimen found off Grand Cayman was dead, but its death was not the anomaly. The anomaly was its stomach. The black swallower possesses an elastic, distensible stomach that allows it to consume prey entirely whole. It does not bite. It unhinges its jaw and pulls itself over its victim like a sleeve. The Grand Cayman specimen had swallowed a snake mackerel, measuring 34 inches long. The prey was over 4 times the length of the predator and more than 10 times its mass. The black swallower's stomach had stretched so far that its own tissue became completely transparent, revealing the coiled, perfectly intact body of the mackerel inside a thin biological bubble. The predator had successfully swallowed the fish, but the prey was so massive that decomposition began before digestion could finish. The resulting gases inflated the black swallower like a balloon, forcing it from the abyss to the surface. What makes the black swallower case particularly disturbing is not the mechanism of its feeding. It is the psychology of its appetite. The creature operates on a biological imperative that outpaces its own physical limits. In the deep ocean, hunger is so absolute that an animal will consume something 4 times its own size, knowing the meal might tear it apart from the inside. It did not die of pressure. It died of greed. Number 8. The Eunice aphroditoise. In the spring of 2009, staff at the Blue Reef Aquarium in Newquay, England, noticed a problem in one of their display tanks. Coral was being destroyed. Large fish were vanishing entirely overnight. The tank was heavily monitored, but the predators could not be found. In a desperate attempt to locate the source, the staff drained the display entirely, dismantling the rockwork piece by piece. Hidden inside a hollow section of PVC piping buried beneath the substrate, they found the culprit. It was a bobbit worm. It was 4 feet long. The bobbit worm is an ambush predator native to the Indo-Pacific. It buries its heavily armored, segmented body entirely in the sea's floor, leaving only 5 antennae exposed. When those antennae are triggered, the worm strikes with a speed that water resistance should render impossible. Its jaws function like a spring-loaded trap, possessing enough bite force to slice a fish cleanly in half. The blue reef specimen had not been purchased. It had not been intentionally introduced. It had arrived years earlier as a microscopic hitchhiker inside a piece of live rock, and it had been growing in the dark ever since. What makes the bobbit worm case uniquely terrifying is not its hunting method, it is its capacity for infiltration. The abyss is not confined to the deep ocean. It can be accidentally carried into our homes, our public displays, and our manufactured safety. The worm lived among the fish, entirely undetected, striking only when the lights went out. We built a cage to observe the ocean, and the ocean put a predator inside the walls. Number 7. The Promachoteuthis sulcus. On the ocean floor, biology frequently experiments with shapes that we cannot easily process. But the most disturbing things pulled from the deep are not the ones that look alien. They are the ones that look familiar. In 2007, a German research vessel operating in the remote waters off Tristan da Cunha in the southern Atlantic deployed a deep-sea trawl to a depth of 6,000 feet. Among the specimens brought to the deck was a small squid. It was roughly an inch long, with stubby tentacles and a mantle typical of deepwater cephalopods. The researchers turned it over to examine the beak, the sharp, chitinous structure squids used to tear flesh. The Promachoteuthis sulcus does not have an exposed beak. The beak is buried deep inside the tissue. Instead, surrounding the mouth opening, the squid possesses a ring of circular, folded lips. Pushing through those lips are rows of what appear to be perfect, flat human teeth. They are not actually bone. They are specialized, fleshy protrusions that merely mimic the exact shape, size, and arrangement of human dentition. The single specimen was preserved, photographed, and placed in a museum. It remains the only one of its kind ever documented. What makes the Promachoteuthis sulcus case particularly unsettling is not the reality of the anatomy. It is the visual impact. It is pareidolia engineered by the abyss, a creature living 6,000 feet beneath the surface of the Atlantic in absolute darkness, evolved a mouth that mirrors our own. The deep doesn't just hold monsters. It holds distorted reflections of ourselves, waiting in the crushing dark. Number 6. The Ideacanthus atlanticus. The twilight zone of the ocean, ranging from 600 to 3,000 feet below the surface, is a region defined by shadows. In this gradient between light and dark, bioluminescence is the primary language. The black dragonfish speaks it fluently. The female of the species resembles a piece of frayed black wire. She possesses no scales. Her body is long, eel-like, and pitch black. Hanging from her chin is a long barbell tipped with a bioluminescent lure, but the jaws are the anomaly. The teeth of the black dragonfish are so disproportionately large that the creature cannot close its mouth. They are jagged, uneven, and needle-sharp. But under the glare of submersible lights, scientists notice something impossible. The teeth do not cast shadows. In 2019, researchers analyzing the dentition found that the teeth of the black dragonfish contain nanocrystals dispersed throughout the enamel. These crystals scatter light, rendering the teeth virtually transparent. The evolutionary reason is brutal. If the teeth were opaque, the glow of the dragonfish's own bioluminescent lure would reflect off them, alerting prey to the presence of the open jaws. What makes the black dragonfish particularly disturbing is the dark perfection of its design. Evolution did not just give it daggers. Evolution gave it daggers made of glass, ensuring that when the prey approaches the glowing light in the dark, the last thing they see is nothing at all. The void did not just invent a weapon. It weaponized invisibility. Number 5. The giant siphonophore. In April 2020, a research vessel operated by the Schmidt Ocean Institute was exploring the Ningaloo Canyons off the coast of Western Australia. At a depth of roughly 2,000 feet, the ROV's camera recorded a biological structure that defied immediate classification. It looked like a massive, glowing string of white yarn floating in an endless, tightening spiral. It was an apolemia, a genus of siphonophore. Scientists estimated its total length at over 150 feet, making it the longest animal ever recorded on Earth, dwarfing the blue whale. But the siphonophore is not an animal. It is a colony. Siphonophores are composed of thousands of individual, highly specialized clones called zooids. They share identical DNA. Some zooids are engineered exclusively for swimming. Others function only as stomachs, others act as stinging tentacles. They cannot survive independently, but together, they fuse their tissue and share a single neural network, operating as one massive, continuous entity. The spiral recorded off Western Australia was a hunting posture. It was a wall of microscopic venom waiting for anything to swim through it. What makes the giant siphonophore deeply unsettling is how it dissolves the concept of individuality. We understand predators as single minds driving single bodies. The siphonophore is a collective. It is an army of clones that has abandoned the boundary of the self to become a single 150-foot living net. It forces us to ask at what point a group of organisms stops being a society and becomes a single, terrifying architecture. Number 4. The Chimothoa exigua. The deep ocean is not the only place the water produces horrors. Sometimes the horrors are pulled up in commercial fishing nets, brought to market and placed on ice. The Chimothoa exigua is a parasitic isopod. It begins its life entirely male, drifting in the water column until it locates a host, typically a snapper or a drumfish. It enters the fish through its gills, attaching itself securely. Once inside, the parasite undergoes a sex change, becoming female. It then crawls forward into the fish's mouth and uses its sharp claws to sever the blood vessels at the base of the fish's tongue. Denied blood flow, the tongue gradually deteriorates and eventually detaches. The parasite then hooks its legs into the remaining tissue. It does not kill the fish. It connects itself to the host's nervous system and muscles. The isopod physically becomes the fish's new tongue. The host fish continues to live, swim, and feed, using the living parasite to hold and swallow prey. The parasite shares the meals, feeding off the fish's blood and mucus. What makes the Chimothoa exigua uniquely horrific is the elegance of its invasion. It is the only known parasite on Earth that functionally replaces a host organ. It does not just consume its victim, it integrates with it. The biological horror lies in the forced symbiosis. The fish is permanently altered, repurposed, and forced to carry the architect of its own transformation in its mouth for the rest of its life, functioning perfectly. Number 3. The Eulogisca gigantea. The waters of the Southern Ocean surrounding Antarctica are the most physically isolating on Earth. The temperatures are lethal. The ice cover dictates who survives. From this environment, deep-water trawlers occasionally pull up a creature that resembles a relic from the Cambrian explosion. The Antarctic scale worm is roughly 8 inches long. Its flat, oval body is shielded by rows of thick interlocking plates and flanked by bundles of rigid golden bristles that look like spun glass. At a glance, it appears to have no face. That is because its face is usually kept inside its body. When the Eulogisca gigantea feeds, its entire throat everts. A muscular pharynx shoots outward, unrolling from inside the worm's gut to reveal a pair of massive, sharp mandibles. The head does not exist until it is deployed as a weapon. Once it bites down, the pharynx retracts, pulling the prey directly into the digestive tract. What makes the Antarctic scale worm deeply unsettling is the utter alienness of its construction. It shares our planet, but it does not look like it evolved from the same tree of life. It is an armored tank of gold and chitin that hides its teeth inside its own stomach. It belongs to an ecosystem where sunlight has never mattered, where cold is absolute, and where the only biological currency is violence. It is a reminder that Earth is capable of producing monsters that require no science fiction to be terrifying. They are just at the bottom. Number 2, the Bathynomus giganteus. Deep-sea gigantism is a biological phenomenon in which species of crustaceans, invertebrates, and other animals found in the deep ocean grow to sizes significantly larger than their shallow water relatives. The mechanism is heavily debated. The result is not. In 2010, an ROV operating in the Gulf of Mexico came across what appeared to be a common pillbug resting on the seafloor. It was a giant isopod. It was 2.5 feet long. It possessed 14 jointed legs, highly reflective compound eyes, and a segmented calcareous exoskeleton. The Bathynomus giganteus is an obligate scavenger. It survives on the carcasses of whales, sharks, and squids that fall from the photic zone above. In the lightless environment of the benthic zone, these falls are unpredictable. To survive, the isopod has evolved a metabolism so staggeringly slow that it borders on suspended animation. In 2008, a giant isopod kept in an aquarium in Japan was fed a single piece of horse mackerel. It ate it. It then refused to eat again. For 5 years and 43 days, the creature sat motionless in its tank, slowly burning through its stored lipids, before simply expiring. It fasted for half a decade. What makes the giant isopod deeply unsettling is not its armor or its resemblance to a terrestrial insect scaled to the size of a dog. It is its patience. The creature represents a form of life that views time differently than we do. It does not hunt. It does not rush. It simply waits at the bottom of the world, perfectly adapted to a completely silent, freezing void, knowing that eventually something above it will die and fall. Number 1. The Macropina microstoma. In 2004, researchers at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute captured the first high-definition video of a barrel-eye fish alive in its natural environment, approximately 2,000 feet deep off the coast of California. The barrel-eye had been known to science since 1939, but early specimens brought to the surface by trawling nets were violently destroyed by the pressure change. Their heads collapsed. The 2004 footage revealed what the nets had ruined. The entire upper half of the barrel-eye's skull is missing. In its place is a transparent, fluid-filled dome. Suspended inside this clear biological canopy are two massive, bright green tubular eyes. The two indentations on the front of its face, which appear to be eyes, are actually olfactory organs, nostrils. Its actual eyes sit entirely inside its own head, gazing permanently upward through its transparent skull to spot the silhouettes of prey against the faint twilight of the surface. When it spots a target, the eyes rotate internally, locking forward as the fish moves to strike. What makes the barrel-eye fish particularly disturbing is not its bizarre anatomy. It is the profound vulnerability of its design. The ocean has forced biology to abandon the basic concept of an opaque skull. To survive in the twilight zone, an animal evolved to expose the innermost workings of its own brain and optical nerves behind a fragile window of tissue. It is a creature that has traded privacy for vision, staring upward through the roof of its own head because the dark demands every advantage. The ocean is not a museum. It is an active laboratory. It covers 70% of the Earth, yet we treat it as an empty backdrop to our own terrestrial history. The things we pull from it are not mistakes. They are the highly refined products of an environment that operates without sunlight, without warmth, and without mercy. They are what life becomes when it is forced to adapt to the void. The depths do not require our understanding. They do not require our permission. They are simply waiting. The abyss is not empty. It is crowded. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.